Roll call. Tommy Blair,
Here.
Dan Adavasio,
Here.
Joseph Smith,
Here.
Chris Kuhn, I'm here, and William Stanley will not be present.
Roll call on the fireside. AJ Anderson?
Present.
Brian?
On his way.
Pending. Latham?
Present.
Dean? Michelle? Here.
Public comment?
Here, make those big.
All right, moving on to, or do you have to say it too?
Nope. Public comment? Okay.
Minutes, November 28th, 2023, that's just approving them? Debbie?
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a second?
Yes. Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Joe.
All in favor?
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Motion on the fireside?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Dean, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next topic is appoint chairperson for police. Tommy, do you have any opinions on this?
I'm sorry?
You have an opinion?
Do you appoint chairperson for police?
Discuss it, see who might want to take it over.
Do you want it?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, I'll take
Okay,
it.
you're it. Like it.
Dan?
I agree with Tommy.
Okay. All right. Someone outside of me needed to make the motion?
I'm sorry, what was that name?
Does someone
I move we
other?
elect Chris as chairman.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I vote on myself?
You don't need to vote one way or the other.
We vote for you.
The railroad train's going. You're it.
Okay, so, all right, so we'll make it Chris.
All right, expense report. On the police side. Move to approve the expense report?
Yes. Somebody needs to make a motion.
Make a motion.
Motion to approve the expense report?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fireside, any questions on the expense report?
Any questions?
No? Everyone get a chance to review? Motion to accept?
Motion. Second by AJ. I
Who's
motion.
doing what now? You're first?
Motion to approve. Second by AJ.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. We have an echo in here, so it's hard to hear sometimes.
Is Peter on the phone with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he is. For the public that's attending, this is only my second meeting in this position, so hence the delay.
Oh, then if you're going to be the chairman, I'm sorry to stop things, then if you're going to be the chairman, we need to appoint a secretary, because you were the secretary.
All right. Any ideas?
You guys interested in being
I
secretary?
nominate Dan for secretary.
Wait, what's the secretary do?
Yeah, I believe I did.
Okay, I'll
You
be,
just have to, technically, you just have.
oh, we take, okay, I will take that position.
Okay, so
Tommy's clear.
you're going to be the secretary. Okay.
Joe.
All right.
Brian's joined us.
Congratulations.
And, okay, Brian's here?
Yes, ma'am.
You can speed through the school zone.
He's gotta go.
Okay, Karen, you're up. All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is nice to be with you all. Joe, nice to meet you. I'm Carrie Richardville. I do the investment kind of piece for your pension fund. So always good to be with you all and hope you're doing well. In your respective books, we'll just kind of start off with the market piece, and that begins on page 3. And just looking at that kind of top right chart there, we had very strong numbers to start our new fiscal year. I was very happy about that. Just looking at that chart and kind of the darkest blue bar there on top, you can see the S&P 500 up almost 12%. And then kind of below that a little bit, mid and small cap stocks also up kind of on the order of 13 to 14%. Very good numbers, very strong numbers on a 1 quarter period. And I think kind of peeling the data back a little bit, we were in an environment where, you know, we've obviously had very aggressive rate hikes from the Fed. They haven't put us into a recession yet, which has been great. Consumers, which are about 70% of our economy, are still spending. Until recently, they were feeling badly, but still spending. Labor markets have remained very strong. And we ended the year with an inflation reading of about 3%, depending upon what index you look at. So when you think about the fact that, you know, a year ago, June, we were at kind of 9s, you know, we ended 2023 in a much better place. I think markets felt much better about kind of where we were and the potential for the Fed to achieve this, what we hear so much about, soft landing, meaning they get inflation under control, but without potentially sending us into a recession. And so I think that's what you see coming through in the very strong domestic equity numbers that we got to start our new fiscal year. Within the international segment, the numbers were very strong there, and that's kind of the gray bars also there in the top right. You can see the all country ex-US was up about 10%, developed markets very similarly up about 10, and even emerging market economies up about 8. So really, you know, very good numbers kind of across the board in equities. And then one of the more interesting stories, I think, for the quarter was actually bonds or fixed income in green. So you can see the index, the full aggregate index, did almost 7% for the quarter, which is really pretty remarkable. And really, it was a very volatile quarter for rates. So to give you an example, earlier in the quarter, kind of early in mid-October, there was still a lot of concerns about inflation. We saw the 10-year get as high as 5%. We ended December with the 10-year at about a 3.88. So that was over a 1% move in rates, essentially in 2 months. But ultimately, rates on the long end of the curve came down. And that's what gave us that almost 7% for the quarter within bonds. Before this quarter, the first 3 quarters of 2023, we were actually slightly negative in bonds, but that very large movement put us up a positive about 5.5 for the full year because of, again, just the dramatic moves down as markets felt, you know, inflation's kind of settling down. Maybe it won't remain elevated over time, and you saw rates move down accordingly. I think maybe we'll flip to our kind of typical yield curve chart, which is at the bottom of page 10, which just gives a bit of a visual to what I spoke about. And on that bottom right of page 10, if you follow the yellow line, I still hear pages flip, I'll give it a minute. If you follow the yellow line down to the blue line where we finished December, so the difference between kind of yellow and blue is the time between September and December, you can really see that kind of dramatic rate drop on the long end, which gave us those very strong numbers for bonds or fixed income. The one segment that did continue to be negative was that separate real estate segment. As we've talked about, higher interest rates are negative for real estate. Obviously, if you're borrowing money to buy properties, that becomes more expensive. And you see that kind of the prices move down in reaction to that. And we've continued to see another negative quarter for separate real estate. So that was kind of the one negative spot for the quarter amongst a very good quarter for public markets. Any questions on the economics before we move into the pensions?
Yes, Carrie, approximately how much do we still have pending in real estate to sell?
So do you mean, Michelle, kind of how much did we take down, or what's our balance in ASB?
Both.
Okay, so you are roughly at 2.5 million as of print of the books. We had put in at the very end of 2022 for a $250,000 redemption from that. You've gotten about 36,000 of that, so it's, the redemptions there are moving pretty slowly. And that has to do with the fact that a lot of managers are really not kind of buying and selling. They're still waiting to see things settle down. But kind of to answer your question, you're at roughly 2.5 million as of print. We do have right now 250,000 redemption, roughly call it 214 of that outstanding still.
Okay.
And we will talk about that in greater detail as well throughout the books. I think flipping into the pensions, kind of shifting gears from the economics and into your individual pensions itself. Let's go to page 13 in your books, our kind of nice line graph of growth within your funds, and I'll start with fire first, and then I'll move to police. But fire, as of print on page 13, you can see the market value of your fund was just about $17.7 million. And on the police side, same thing, page 13, you all, very similar level, just shy of kind of 17.7 million there. Both of you also on a 10-year basis, you can see kind of along the bottom there, hovering right around 6.8 on the 10-year for fire, and about 6.9 on the 10-year there for police. Again, kind of on a rolling 10-year basis there. Fire on page 14 from an asset allocation standpoint, you were just about 50% of your total fund in domestic equity. You were at 15% on the nose in international equity. You were at about 14.5% in domestic fixed income, roughly 4.5% in global fixed, just about 14% in real estate, and about 2% in cash. On the police side, on page 14 as well, you all were at just about 48% domestic equity, about 14% international equity, about 16.5% in domestic fixed, about 4.5% in global fixed, also just about 14% in real estate, and a couple percent, call it 2%-ish in cash for plan expenses as well. Looking at your asset allocation as compared to your targets, if we move to 19 in your books, both funds really very, very close to your targets for all of your asset classes. Fire on your side, you can see, most of those green triangles land right on the black line, which is kind of where we shoot to be. For reference, with real estate, you are about 1% underweight. We're chipping away at that. And then on the police side, for you all on page 19 as well, also very close to your targets. You're a little bit underweight domestic equity and international as well, slightly overweight domestic fixed income, but really very close to your targets. And keep in mind, anytime we ever need to raise cash for your plan, we will look at the current allocation and kind of pull from anywhere that you're overweight. So that's kind of a nice natural rebalancing that we've got at our disposal. Really, both plans look very good from an asset allocation standpoint. Getting into performance on page 22 of your books. For fire, very good absolute quarter, about a 6.8. We did trail the index a bit. The index was up a little bit over 8. And a lot of that does have to do with that separate real estate, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit further as we discuss the managers. And on the police side, about a 6.7 for you all, again with the benchmark up just a little bit north of 8. Kind of getting into the individual segments, for fire overall within equity, kind of both domestic and international, we were up about 10.8. The index was up a little bit more, about 11.5. From a domestic equity standpoint, again about 11.5. The index was up about 12. On the growth side, we've kind of talked a lot about the challenges, particularly in the large growth space. So Allspring, good absolute return, about 14, pretty much in line, but slightly behind the index, which was up about 14.2. One of their global payments company called Flywire, was down a little bit. And once again, your kind of weights and allocations to the Magnificent Seven played in quite a bit there. On the mid-cap side, Touchstone also pretty much in line, up about 13.7, the index up about 14.6. Some of their, particularly their financials were a little bit behind there. You have the extended market index, which was up 15. And on the value side, Brandywine up a 7.3. The Russell index was up about 9.5. Some of the lower return on equity stocks actually did a little bit better for the quarter, and they were also underweight within financials banks. The banks did well when rates kind of came down, and so they were a little bit underweight there. And then Vanguard Equity Income, about 9% for the quarter. The Russell 1000 did about 9.5. Some of the energy names, your kind of Chevron, ConocoPhillips that had good quarters before this one, some of those energy names did pull back there, and that was a little bit of a drag there. Just kind of talking the international equity segment on the next page. About an 8.4 overall for the international equity segment. The growth side, that side very much in favor. Euro-Pacific up about 10.4. Over the index up a little less than 10, excuse me. And a lot of that, again, kind of consumer, Shopify, as well as semiconductor names like Taiwan Semiconductor and some of those kind of back in favor. And then balance that with the value side. The value side up about 6.5, but a little bit shy of the index, up a little bit over 8. Names like Honda and a couple of other overseas drug companies, Sanofi, were a little bit of a drag for them for the quarter. Within fixed income overall, we were up just about 7, pretty much right in line with the index there. On the domestic side, Dodge & Cox, your manager, which takes on quite a bit of corporate credit, and they also had kind of recently lengthened their duration. That put them ahead of the aggregate, so they were up about 7.3. The ag was up about 6.8. On the global side, good absolute returns from PIMCO, up about 5.8, ever so slightly shy of the global ag, which was up about 6. They were a little bit underweight U.S. rates. And then ASB, as I kind of mentioned, down 7.8. The index was down about 5.2. Continue to see challenges there, not only from higher interest rates, but really kind of from individual properties and kind of that office segment in general. And we'll talk about that a little bit more after we do our kind of quarterly review. Hey, good to see you, Pedro. On the police side, I did kind of hit the manager level detail, discussing fire. So I think I'll just kind of hit your segments. For equity, again, roughly 10.8 versus the about 11.5 for the index. Very similarly to fire, about 11.5% out of domestic equity when the overall index did 12. Your international segment up about 8.3. Your fixed income segment up just about 7 as well. With Dodge & Cox up about 7.3, the global up just shy of 6, and of course ASB, as I mentioned, we'll kind of come back to that. So separate and apart from the fact that we will discuss ASB, any other questions at this point in time on 1231? Okay. So going to ASB, and there had been kind of some real estate information in your packet. I think we all well know, it's been pretty well telegraphed, the challenges within real estate, but certainly ASB has kind of had their own challenges too. And what we've seen from them is, historically, they were a manager that would use less leverage than a lot of their peers. And what you've kind of seen from them is later cycle, they've taken that leverage level from kind of 18, 19% kind of up to 28%. Seems like it's a little bit late cycle to be kind of taking on a little bit more leverage. But also one of the areas where they've really struggled is office. I know we've talked about that. And the thing is, they don't have an overweight to office versus the index. Both are at about 18 or 19%. But what we've seen from them is the age of their office properties is really starting to kind of bring them down. So within their office portfolio, about half of their properties, about 47% of their properties are greater than 20 years old. And in this very early days of kind of deciding winners and losers in the future of office, one of the biggest determinants of kind of tenant attractiveness has been newer buildings, kind of walkable amenities, maybe green features, retail space at the bottom, just kind of very well thought out floor plans, etc. And it really seems like kind of in that regard, because of the age of the ASB properties, they're kind of getting left behind there. So officially at our firm, they are on watch. My recommendation to you is I do think in the next couple quarters, we will probably move on from them. And so I've brought you candidates today. I've kind of showed you how ASB looks according, in compared to a couple others that we follow, American Realty and TA. But the reality is, if you all terminate today, it'll probably be, 4 to 6 quarters or more before we have a full redemption. So we really don't necessarily need to decide where we're going yet. We can kind of continue to watch some of those names. But the action that I would like to request from you all is to go ahead and submit a full redemption from ASB at this time. I think that the guidance at our firm will change. And with the queue being what it is, roughly kind of 15% of assets, I think it's going to take time for that queue to kind of play out, and I think it makes sense to get into it now.
Carrie, when you do that, do they do it in partial increments or all at once?
They do it in partial increments, which makes it really challenging because there's no benefits to being first in line, if that makes sense. They don't pay them kind of sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4. They put everybody kind of side by side and divide the pot.
So it could be quite extended.
It could be. Now, if we do see rates come down at the end of this year some, or continue to come down, I think that will help because that does make financing cheaper, especially for property types that managers can find debt on. But yeah, potentially it could be, several quarters and
Come
or,
down, it's gonna be very small amounts, I think.
yeah, I think it would help maybe incrementally, But I do think it makes sense to go ahead and put ourselves in the redemption line for that. It will take a while to play out, so we do have time to decide where we might want to go. But I think at this point, it makes sense probably to move in a different direction. And the thing about putting in a full redemption is, if we were to watch this and in a few quarters we go, gosh, they're looking pretty good, we changed our mind, we can rescind the redemption, but let's go ahead and get ourselves in line, I feel like.
We need a motion for that, don't we?
Absolutely, yes, please.
Got a question. So we're talking about redeeming both of these funds?
So ASB for each plan, so one manager, but it's one that you share across the 2 funds. Yes, I recommend the same action for both boards.
And what will we do with that if we do redeem it? Then we decide what else to do with it? We would have nothing in real estate?
I think it'll be a long time before that happens, Dan, and as we're getting money, we'll be talking about it, redeploying potentially into a new manager, but we would have to get a decent amount back before we do that. So it may be, we could maybe use liquid real estate. I think that's something we could talk about, but we've got plenty of time to kind of plan for that, considering we've gotten, let's call it 15% of the redemption request we put in about 5 quarters ago.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense to talk about TA and ASB now before we make that call, or?
Well, and I think they're good for you all to know that they're out there, I think, because I like either American or a TA for you. Those are kind of the ones I'm going to be watching through time. But we wouldn't want to commit to them now because we'd be, potentially we could be way overweight in real estate,
Right.
Sending money into a new fund before we've gotten our money out of the other. So I did kind of provide that just to show you what some of their peers are kind of doing and looking like, and those are 2 pretty realistic options for us that I quite like a lot. But we don't necessarily need to kind of select that now because it will very likely be, probably a year or so rather than quarters before we're in a position where we're selecting the next fund.
The 250,000 we did has already come through, right?
It has not. We have gotten roughly 36,000 of that redemption. That's how slowly the funds are coming back from separate real estate right now because really there's no transacting going on.
Oh.
Yeah.
So do we reinvest the 36 or we wait till we get the 250 or?
So honestly, Dan, what has happened with the 36 is it's gone into cash and we're able to kind of use it for benefits and things like that. And it is making the money market rate of about 5, so that's a good thing.
We pulled off
But it hasn't really been meaningful enough for us to have to really holistically look at redoing, doing something different from an allocation standpoint.
Well, I noticed the cash grew significantly in the 4th quarter.
Likely it's your annual contribution, and we did put some of that to work too. So it may just have been a kind of a timing of the printing of your book, but likely it has to do with the New Year's contribution.
That was what Dan said, that was the partial out already? We put in, I think we allocated a couple meetings ago to pull some out of ASB? Is that right? You got
Yes,
in line
we
for that?
did. We sure did. We submitted a 250,000 redemption to them. We did it at the December of 2022 meeting, which put us in the queue for March 31st, 2023, because there's a notice period for them. So we have put that in. We've just only gotten 36,000 of that 250 because things are moving so slowly in real estate right now.
Interesting, yeah. Now, does that apply the same if we transition into one of these other things, or is there still a buy down through ASB to go, if it transitions into another fund? Or
We
is it-
would want to see some significant kind of funds returned from ASB before we commit to another manager, so that we're just not grossly overweight
Yeah,
in
for sure.
real estate.
Yeah, yeah. Understood.
So we would redecide once we get this money back.
And once we start to see kind of those meaningful flows, we'll get way ahead of it, but I think we're looking a year, plus, rather than quarters, a couple quarters, just due to the state of the market right now.
Somebody's not in office buildings.
So the recommendation is stay in the same weight of real estate, just that different manager.
Yes, I would not change your IPS weights. I think it will take a while to play through, and we will replace it. We might have the ability to use, a publicly traded REIT fund or something if we need an intermediate kind of bridge between one manager and the other. I'm still comfortable with the allocation. I just think it's time to move on from ASB.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for both boards, just a motion for 100% share redemption of shares from ASB, if you agree with the recommendation.
You want me to go first? All right, I'm gonna make a motion for 100% redemption request in ASB.
Second.
Was that Joseph?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion for 100% redemption.
I make a motion for 100% redemption from ASB fund.
Seconded.
Seconded by Brian.
All in favor?
Brian second.
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. I will effectuate that. Debbie, I'll work with you to get you the letters that we need to do that. And then the last thing I just wanted to speak with you all about is hopefully you got the email, but we had some exciting firm news at ANCO within the last week or so. We are actually being acquired by a company called Mariner Wealth out of Overland Park, Kansas. And Mariner is a company that is not in our space. They do kind of individual and high net worth financial management. So they liked us and our business really for the cultural fit and for the fact that we kind of plug in beside them and complement their business. So because they don't do what we do, they like us, they're taking all of us. It's what we call a stock purchase. So they're truly buying the entire entity. We are all going over, those of us that are shareholders in ANCO will be shareholders in Mariner. There's kind of no, big cash out event. So we're very excited. It seems like an excellent cultural fit. I think it will really give us kind of the resources and support to continue to grow. Our research team will grow from about 15 to about 70, and I think we can leverage kind of some of that additional talent. And our AUM will roughly double. So if we were just about, let's call it 90, I think we were 90 billion-ish under advisement at the last valuation. Mariner is about 112, and there's actually another organization called 4th Street coming in that's about 8 billion. So we'll roughly double kind of our AUM, and that should help us from a manager leverage, when it comes to pricing standpoint as well. We've got kind of more assets to negotiate better pricing. So we are very excited and happy to answer any questions that you all might have about it. But I think the culture is excellent, and I think it'll be a great match for us.
Think the fees that go down stay the same or go up?
I do not, so you all are under, I think, a 4-year fee agreement. That will not change. So I don't expect any change there, and hopefully we can get you kind of good, better manager fees and kind of go from there.
You can feel free to change them downward.
I will take that back.
I make a motion to proceed with the sale.
Are you okay, Pedro, if they consent? Is that all right?
Yeah,
I didn't, okay.
so good afternoon, Pedro Herrera, for those of you who just heard my voice, I have the body as well. I agree with everything that was said. My only suggestion would be just, I think it's what we've been recommending to all of our clients, mutual clients with ANCO or with Mariner soon to be, is to formally accept or consent to the assignment. And then whenever the deal for the transaction actually closes, about April.
That's right.
And the dust is kind of settled, then we'll draft a new agreement with each board with the new entity. And then I think that'll we'll have a cleaner record, and then we'll move forward after that. But no issues from a legal standpoint, everything remains the same as was just said.
Gary, do you have a January number for us?
So right in front of you should be your in fact, it's behind your computer, Tommy. So you were slightly ahead of where you were in the book. Yes, that's it, yep.
Just trying to hide from you.
So you were slightly ahead of where you were in the book, Tommy, so we're still looking very good through close of business Friday.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, Dean, for the motion. If you all are okay to make that motion to consent, that'd be great.
I was actually joking, I was talking about the sale.
Oh, okay.
Do I make it or ask it?
Motion to accept
Yeah.
Motion to consent to the assignment of the contract as discussed. Somebody wants us to say so moved.
So moved.
Need a second.
A second? Second. Thank you, Pedro.
Fireside motion to accept the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Latham.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And that's really all that I had, unless there's any other questions for me.
Yeah, I just have one.
Sure?
Pardon my, I just never quite understood this. All these funds we had, are they more like an ETF or more like a mutual fund?
You are in mutual funds.
Okay, are there people that do this with ETFs at a much lower rate?
So let me actually caveat that, Dan. You have one ETF, which is your Brandywine fund, because they shut down their mutual fund. I don't know kind of how broad the offering is among the other managers with ETFs. I'd be happy to kind of check that. I don't know offhand. For like your touchstones, I haven't seen it for like Vanguard Equity Income or kind of American funds. I don't know if DFA, I actually don't know off the top of my head how many of those would be available.
Just from personal experience, mutual funds tend to be 5% fees, where ETFs tend to be 1.5%.
So I think the differential isn't quite that big. I want to say sometimes there's kind of a 5 or 10 basis point difference from what I see on the institutional side, but I'll be happy to kind of look fund by fund for you. I suspect that a lot of the ones we use are not available in that structure, but I would be happy to verify
They
that.
may have to restructure, it may be a better deal for us
Yeah.
through this than
Yeah.
we normally get. I don't
Yeah.
know. Then a retail mutual fund would
Yeah.
be, it might be much cheaper.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have a different share class also.
Yes, this is an institutional, so you do get, the better pricing than on the retail side here. I think probably that gap is much smaller
Much
because of
smaller.
the institutional, yeah.
Thank you.
So Carrie, this consent that I've made copies of, is this
Yes.
going to be signed today, or is it going to be something else?
Are you okay with that form, Pedro? If so, that'd be great.
This would be
Yeah,
fine.
that would be great if you could. And that'll consider it done if you could.
Okay, get that done.
And then I think, AJ, did you have a question as well?
Well, I'm curious about this real estate manager analysis.
Yeah.
brochure.
Yeah,
We have not gone through it. I guess there's really no hurry to do it.
that's exactly my take, yes. Because we probably won't select a manager for another 3 or 4 quarters. So we really have the luxury of kind of continuing to see how they do before we really make that decision. So you're able to kind of see them and become familiar with them.
Yes.
But again, without, committing for quite a while, we've got the luxury of continuing to watch their performance, inflows and outflows and those kind of things before we make a decision.
Do you want
It was a
to-
little bit early, but at least it just kind of shows you what others are doing and kind of what other funds, are options.
It gives us the opportunity to peruse this, and I think I'll have a couple of questions by our next meeting.
Okay, happy
regarding
to
these
answer
2 other
that.
firms.
Sure.
Thank you.
You want them to hold on to these, or you'll send us?
Oh, no, I don't mind reprinting them. Yeah, no, they don't have to hold on to them. We'll probably periodically we'll refresh them because obviously the performance data will change. And so, periodically we can look at updated performance on those.
Okay, Bill.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie.
We have this one now, and Michael, really correct.
Hi, good afternoon. I know, it's good to be seen.
Yeah, you almost look familiar.
I'm more aerodynamic, is that? I like it. It's for my swimming career.
So very nice to meet everybody, I think formally. Pedro Herrera, we're the attorneys for both of the plans. Really, obviously, if you have any questions, just feel free to jump in, but I just wanted to go over a couple things with you. Nothing necessarily actionable, it's more just informational. First, excuse me, let me start with, and Debbie, did we get you guys a copy of that memo for the financial disclosure form?
Yep.
Okay. So, as you guys are aware, and for our newer trustees, maybe not yet, but every year, as required by the State Ethics Commission, you are technically considered a public official. And so you are required to file a financial disclosure form with the State Ethics Commission. So it's that Form 1 that you may have already done, and if not, this will be your first go about. But you should have already done at least one when you first came onto the board. And so last year, they changed the rules a little bit. And so while we are going to continue to file the Form 1, where we file has changed. So historically, if you guys recall, that Form 1 was filed with the supervisor of elections in the county where you reside. And then in turn, it would file the same form with the State Ethics Commission. So as of January 1 and going forward, the state essentially eliminated the middleman, so to speak. And so now you're going to be filing directly with the State Ethics Commission via a portal or a website. And so we included the website as part of that brief memo that we provided. But obviously we can circulate it again to you guys as the date approaches, as that July 1st date approaches. But just so you guys are aware, that's where you're going to be filing. In theory, it should be more efficient. We'll see. The only difference, I think, honestly, you have to create an account, so you're going to have to create a username and a password. It just takes a few minutes, 2-3 minutes. And then you'll use that same account going forward for however long you're required to file the form. But initially, you're going to have to set up your own account, and then you can submit your form via that portal. Okay?
Has to be submitted.
Has to be submitted. No way around it. There is a penalty, as you know, as we've discussed. There is a penalty if it's not filed. Generally, what they'll do is by September 1, if you haven't filed it, they will assess the full freight, and so it's a daily penalty up to $2,500. So they'll wait until kind of you reach the maximum, which is that September 1 date, and then they'll assess you the full freight, the full penalty. So now, with the way things are electronically, at least, there have been a lot less issues with filing and them not having the form and so on and so forth. But if there is an issue, obviously we can address it. But really, the only way we've been able to get them to waive the penalty is if we can show them that you did submit it on time. So, but I think hopefully with the portal it'll be a little bit easier for everybody. I will also say that there has been a change to the Form 1 itself. The form is going to look really substantively the same, but in the instructions, there is a change to how you report these things. So for you guys that recall, you used to have two options. You could either report on a dollar basis or as a percentage basis, right? I think it had to be greater than 10% of your annual income, and then you would list these things. That percentage basis has been removed now. So now you have to report everything based on the dollar figure. So just so you guys are aware, that is a change this year when you guys go to complete that report or that disclosure form. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. But I do want to point that out because that is a difference that most trustees that I'm aware of would use the percentage basis. So it will be a change this year, but if you're still doing the dollar, then nothing has changed. But I do want to point that out. Okay? And then also, you may have heard or you may at some point hear about a new Form 6, a new financial disclosure form for public officials. Excuse me. That does not apply to you all as pension trustees. Okay? The Form 6 only applies to publicly elected officials. So, local legislators, city council, mayor potentially, obviously the state legislators, right? The judiciary, as well as certain cabinet positions. But pension trustees, you're going to still file the Form 1. The Form 6 has nothing to do with you all. Okay? It's just a more involved financial disclosure. It's more specific. It's more thorough. kind of similar to what the federal filing is requiring. Okay? And then legislative update, nothing has been filed. As you guys are aware, session started probably about 3 weeks ago or so. There's been nothing filed that would affect our plan, either the fire or the police plan. There is a bill that's been filed that will affect or amend the Florida retirement system. The biggest change being proposed is to re-implement or reincorporate the 3% COLA. So if you guys recall, for anybody hired after July 1st of 2011, there was a 3% COLA available. The legislature removed that 3% COLA almost a decade ago now at this point. And so, it's been kind of making its way back. It was on the bill last year, typical legislative fashion. I think there was some horse trading right at the deadline, and so it was removed. But the understanding was that it would be reintroduced or refiled this year. And my understanding is it does have ample support, so it should pass. But obviously, we'll keep you guys posted. The other change for police officers rehired back into or with a Florida retirement system employer. They're changing the rules a little bit. They're allowing greater flexibility. So if you do come back, if you are reemployed by an FRS employer, you can obviously continue to work, but you will be able to continue receiving your pension. So there's and they're going to increase the supplemental benefit. So there's a couple good things in there. We'll obviously keep you posted when session concludes and let you know where the dust settles. But it does look like it has support to make its way through it. Okay.
Is that still a 1 year gap for FRS? They have to be
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. And that's generally if you're going back to the same position that you were working before, right? So, and I mean, not that this would happen, but potentially if you were a correctional officer and now you're going to be a police officer, that 6 month may not apply. So it just depends. If you're a police officer, going to be a police officer, then you would have that 6 months. And that's really it. That's all I had for my report.
My email in regards to the cancer policy was,
Yes, I saw that just now, that they had adopted the cancer presumption ordinance, so that's good. There was a change to the statutes, I guess about 3 years ago now, where there was an additional presumption included for 21 different forms of cancer. So if a firefighter contracts one of these different forms of cancer, and they're obviously disabled, as a result, it is presumed that they incurred that illness, the cancer diagnosis, in the line of duty. So we had originally proposed an amendment. I think the city didn't want to pass it because it was a state law, and so they didn't think there was a need to pass it. And then we got a letter from the state last year saying, why hadn't we passed it? So we reintroduced it, and the city did enact it or did adopt it recently. I don't know, pretty recent, last week, yesterday?
first.
Yeah, last week. So that's been amended, and that's all done, taken care of. Again, doesn't really change anything for us, but just at least we won't get a letter from the state next year about that. Okay. And then I think the next item on the agenda is also, I'll just kind of touch on it again. You have received a line of duty disability application from a firefighter, Wentz, I believe.
Police.
Oh, I'm sorry, police. I apologize. Is it Wentz? W-E-N-T-Z?
No, yeah, works.
Works. I'm sorry. I can't understand my own penmanship. Works. Just for the record, what we generally like to do is we like to have the board just formally accept the application. You're not making any decision or determination as to the eligibility of it, right? You're not granting or denying the disability benefit application or claim. You're just simply accepting it, right, for procedural reasons. And then we'll obviously go ahead and we'll start processing it. So it's really just more of a formality, but just so we have it as part of the record.
Motion.
Do we have
Please.
a question?
Sorry.
Hold on.
Yeah. I think there was a
Did
question
somebody have a
first.
question?
Do we have the application in hand?
I have the application.
Is that something that we would look at right now, or just approve for?
So, yeah, you can certainly look at, I have it electronically. Really, it's a standard application, and all it has, and it, you know, Debbie confirmed it for us, it just has, you know, date of hire, date of birth, name, and then some other personal information. But if you want to hold off, we can get it to you, and you can address it at the next meeting. That's more than fine.
I didn't
not-
know they were supposed to get it.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Do you want to see it now really quickly, or by any chance, or?
Well, if you have it readily available, if not, if it's a formality, then
Hold on one second.
go ahead and vote on it.
Yeah, I think it's just really a formality for, honestly, it's something, I don't think it's legally necessary. I think, you know, lawyers love paper. So we just like having it as part of the record. If the board, you know, formally received it, it was sent to Debbie, she sent it to us, and we're gonna start working on it, processing it. But we figured, we always like to have our boards just receive and file, essentially, is what we're doing.
Okay.
But if you give me 1 second, I can pull up the emails.
Yeah, I've got the medical record right here from the doctor. I'm going to see if I have his application still. Yes, here's his application. Basically, it asks for his name, his address, his phone number, date of birth, date of employment, date of injury, which he's claiming is 2013. The offset symptoms of hyper blood pressure and chronic pain. He's actively employed. He's not on workers' comp. Then he went and saw his doctor and got all his some of his medical stuff to show that he's no longer capable of being a police officer. And that's what was sent to Pedro.
And just as a follow-up to that, so we have another questionnaire that we're going to send to him that essentially it helps us kind of process it. So it asks him to list all treating physicians, doctors, rehab centers, whatever the case may be, for the specific disabling injury or illness. And then on our end, what we'll do now is, for those who are, I think this is the first one we do with you guys.
This is the second, we had one a year ago.
Oh, that's right. I thought that was for fire. You're right. You're right. So essentially what we'll do is we'll start working on gathering all the medical records from these different treating physicians. I know he has some, and obviously this is by no means any type of insinuation or indictment on our member. But, you know, obviously you guys are police officers, you understand chain of custody, so we need to request the records formally or from the actual provider to get them back. And it's just a matter of due process. It's not because we think anything is wrong or he would do anything with the records or anything like that. It's just procedurally that's the best course. Okay. So we'll be requesting all those records. Once we have all the records, then we schedule, as required by your statute, by Chapter 185, as well as your local ordinance, the board selects an independent medical examiner, a physician, who will essentially receive all the medical records so that they understand, so that they have a full context, right, of what's been done. And then they'll have, obviously, their own evaluation of this individual. And then that doctor will provide the board with a report, essentially with, you know, their conclusions. So that once the board has that, we'll hold a hearing here or somewhere. And then the board will make a decision as to whether to grant or deny the application.
Okay.
And he's got all the paper, he got it.
He got it already? Okay, good.
Sorry about it.
Perfect.
Debbie, are you gonna, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Pedro, are you gonna email this to everybody?
I can email it.
This out, okay. All right.
I will say, you know, obviously you guys are free to look at it. It is not public information outside of this meeting. So, you know, just be aware that it's not something that, because it does have, you know, personal information. So,
Yeah.
so it's not something that's open for anybody or it's not technically a public record.
Okay.
Okay? But you can absolutely receive it.
I haven't done this before, I'm sorry. Is this a application for to be medically retired or?
Yes, sir. So this is so your plan offers retirement, death, and or disability benefits, right? So if a member comes and says, I'm disabled, I can no longer work, then they are medically retired, right? They're eligible to start collecting a pension rather than, having to wait until they reach normal retirement age. So they're eligible to start receiving a pension, and then whether it's line of duty or non-line of duty could potentially affect how much of a pension they receive.
Okay.
But generally, it's the greater of either your accrued benefit or whatever the minimums are in your ordinance and state law.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve the application for disability from. Accept the application for the police officer's disability application.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then, so as part of this process, we are going to be requesting medical records. So periodically, we're going to ask Debbie. There are some fees. I think our firm generally covers most of them. But if not, if Debbie has to pay for the records, that's where that'll come from. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And that's it. That concludes my report. Unless you guys have any questions or anything.
Got any questions for Pedro?
I do not. It's nice to see you in person. Meet you.
I had questions, I'm not sure if now's the right time to ask them about the COLA or the drop. Is that something that we can talk about afterwards, or?
Sure.
Well, one of the things I was talking about with the FRS looking to implement the COLA, is that something that, how would the process go for us to look at implementing that and what that would cost and things like that? Like I said, I'm new to this whole process.
Sure. So for any kind of pension benefit, pension is a mandatory subject of bargaining. So it's something that has to be agreed through the collective bargaining process, right? So the union would have to agree with the city to add a benefit, let's say. So if you want to add a COLA, the union and the city would negotiate what that COLA is going to look like, and then, obviously there would be an ordinance amendment, and that would then be in place.
Okay.
To cost it out, generally the pension board's actuary is in the best position to kind of value these things. They already have all the data, they know all the assumptions. Frankly, it's cheaper to use the plan actuary, and more accurate, to be honest, than to use an outside actuary. But that doesn't mean that you can't use an outside actuary, but just as long as everybody understands that whatever the benefit's going to cost, the pension board is going to use our actuary. So if the price tag differs, it's our actuary that we're going to pay, right? And ultimately the city's going to pay for. So that's another reason why the pension board actuary is generally used for those things. And then if you have something in mind, or if the union has something in mind, you could, obviously, how have we done it in the past?
It hasn't been done.
It hasn't been done? Okay. So we could address it in a couple different ways. Either, obviously we would allow for the plan actuary, or the board would allow for the plan actuary to kind of do this work on behalf of the union or on behalf of the city at each own cost, right? So if the union wants to have a cost study of what it would look like to add a 3% COLA, you would contract with the actuary and say, okay, it's going to cost you, I don't know, $1,000. I'm making that up. $1,000. The union would pay the actuary, and the actuary would give you a report. And then you can go to the table and say, this is what it's going to cost to put in a 3% COLA.
Okay, I appreciate it. And that's the same process to extend the drop from 5 to 7 or 8 years?
Exactly right. Same drop, same process. Generally speaking, the extension of the drop and I'm not an actuary, so not that intelligent. But generally, there's no cost to that, because again, you're not receiving anything more or less. It's just whatever the plan returns net of expenses. That's what a member gets on their drop balance. And the drop, as you guys are aware, it's your own pension. We're just paying it to you sooner, right? Not sooner, because you already reached normal retirement age. We're just paying it to you, but it's kind of being held in trust. So generally, there's no cost to that.
But, you know, it would be the same process nonetheless.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Nothing else?
All right, motion to adjourn, police side.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.